Hello. So in honor of MerMay, we're going to work on a mermaid adventure. So let's see which one we're going to work on today. I think I like this one. The mermaid has found a pirate ship, and they're going to dream of dreamy dreams of the pirate ship. Alright, so my cat is luckily not around right now, so I'm going to do the background. Sometimes I like to do the background last and sometimes first, but there's enough little detail in this. I'm going to try to get all the background done without the cat here. We'll see if this is a good plan or a not so good plan. And as I have said before, when I normally paint watercolors, I turn the paper around quite a lot so that I get my hand at just the right angle to get into some of these little areas. But because I also want to do this as a time lapse, I'm going to keep the paper orientation exactly the same for all of this, which is a little tricky. But we'll see how this goes. So get all the blue in here. I think MerMay is a fun challenge because these are mythical creatures, and therefore we can make them look any way we want to. You know, they can have Hawaiian skin tones, they can have African skin tones, whatever appeals to you. And also they can have any kind of aquatic friends. They can have sharks or whales or puffer fish. There are quite a lot of options out there. And they don't have to be ocean-going mermaids. There are all sorts of mermaid types of creatures that live in lakes and streams and fountains. So part of the fun of it is to find what version of mermaid calls to you the most. But we're starting out with all the blue stuff. That way if the cat comes along and they lay on half of it, I can work on the other half, whatever half that happens to be. It's all about the cat. It's funny, most people who watch my art channels are amused by the cat and its shenanigans. I recently had someone who was complaining that the cat got in the way. And I was thinking that's just what the cat does. I'm not going to lock the cat up so that they can't come into my office. I would have to lock them in the bathroom or something like that. And then you'd have a whole video of the cat meowing in sadness that they've been trapped in the bathroom, which clearly they would think was some sort of a tragic mistake and not a deliberate act. Because who in the world would lock a kitty up in a bathroom on purpose? Nope, must be a sad mistake. Alright. Little insides of the purse. I generally like to do the bottom parts of an image darker and the upper parts lighter. I just got blue in that little tiny star, but I should be able to lift out the color. If you ever make a mistake in watercolor, then you should be able to get some clear water onto your brush and then go down and lift out the paint color out of the area. There's some colors like red that will stain the paper, and it's a lot harder to get the color back out again, but for most colors, if you just make your brush wet and clean, you should be able to poke away at a color area and lift the color back out of it, sort of like erasing the color off the system. Now, part of the challenge of doing it this way is that generally in watercolors you don't want to have one area wet, like the blue, and then paint another area that's near it while the first area is still wet, because otherwise if the two areas touch, the wet colors will tend to run into each other and make a giant mush. And since I have so many areas that right now that I am touching with this blue, it's going to mean that there's a whole bunch of adjacent areas that I really can't paint yet until this layer dries. But we will see how it goes. For the upper layers of blue there, I think I might do them in different brightnesses and darknesses of blue. But we'll see. Sometimes in water, upper levels have different blue-green values. We'll see when I go back up there what I am in the mood for. You might think that we only have 6 colors here, so we don't have a lot of variety, but you can mix colors together to make new colors. It's part of the fun of watercolors. And as long as you have blue, red, and yellow, you have the base components for lots of different colors. And it's fun to play with them and see how that works. If you put down a second layer or a third layer or so on, it generally should get darker and darker because your additional layers of paint are blocking more and more of the light reaching down to the paper. And the paper is what provides the glowy whiteness of a watercolor. So the more layers of paint we put down, the darker it's going to end up getting. If I try to paint the green of the mermaid right now, right while I'm painting all this blue next to it, the green and the blue would be likely to merge into each other. Alright, so let's see. I could do lighter and lighter versions of blue for the upper waves. But maybe I could do some like getting it to the blue greens. And that way it would help to distinguish when I get to the blue of the sky. which will be a similar blue to this. Alright, so let's do a very light blue sky, just so that we know where we are heading with the sky. And figure out what's going to be different about those middle layers. So we got, oh, no. Try to figure out what parts in here are sails and which part are sky areas. Alright. Got a very light blue sky. I'm going to try putting in a slightly darker blue into this one spot. And while the blue is still in there, I'm going to add in some green. Make it a blue-green, and that'll give it a different kind of color from the other areas. Alright. Now her hair also, let's see, we're back to this whole, I have to be careful about what I touch now. Alright, let's do the middle of the heart thing. Alright, which we'll do red. Somewhere that it's relatively safe to touch, because it doesn't touch anything else. I want her hair to be dark, because that's just the style of mermaid I'm going for. But when you're using watercolors, usually dark means that you need to put lots of layers on, and each layer needs to dry in between. And I just did the blue on the outside, which is still a little wet. Here, let's start with the purple layer. Her hair is not going to be purple, but the idea is to put on lots of layers, and each layer after layer after layer is going to make it darker and darker. I'm heading towards a brown-black kind of color, which is going to mean blue and red and yellow. Purple has the benefit of already having blue and red in it together, and that way I don't have to use up too much more of my actual blue here. So this is sort of providing blue and red for me in one package that I'm not already using up a lot of. And that will dry. Sorry. That layer will dry while I work on another area. Watercolors tend to dry lighter than they show up when they are dark. So even as this is showing a little dark right now, it's just going to dry right out to light, and I'll have to put on multiple more layers to get it down to the darkness level that I'm actually aiming for. Alright. Right, well, let's think about this boat while we're over here. So I want the boat to be brown, and brown is going to be a mixture of red, yellow, and a little blue. I will just start by putting the whole thing in red. And I'll be able to work on the individual planks later, but this will at least give it a starting point. And again, it's going to be one of those things where I have to let this layer dry and then work on other things. Another thing in terms of the image composition, this is already drawn for us, so we can't really change what is put where, but we can change how the eye is drawn across the image with use of color. And in places where we put very dark color and very light color, the eyeball is naturally going to be drawn there. So we want some of these things, like the boat and the seaweed, to be very low key on color, because the main focus isn't this piece of seaweed, for example. We want it to be green, but we don't want it to be the darkest green or the brightest green. And by having these guys lower key colors, that lets the eyeball get drawn to the thing that we actually want to draw attention to, which hopefully is the mermaid, I would think would be the main object of focus here. Alright, I think we might be able to start working on the first layer of the mermaid. So what that means is that we're going to want to have multiple layers of green on this mermaid so that the green is nice and vibrant, so it really draws the eye. And we could also take an ink pen and add some scales to it if we wanted, which would also draw the eye, because there'd be a nice strong contrast between the green of the mermaid and the blackness of the scale lines. But that will come later. You'd want to do those kinds of scale lines last. So when you're painting, you're not just thinking about this current layer that you're painting, but you're thinking about how you want the image as a whole to look. So, and I could put on the second layer now, but it's usually better to wait for the first layer to dry and then to come back and do the second layer. Even between the mermaid and the seaweed nearby, you want the mermaid part to stand out. You don't want it to just blend in with the other seaweeds and have the mermaid get lost in there. Alright, so maybe these wave areas are dry enough that we can put in a second wave. We would want the second wave to be a little bit different from these other nearby waves, so that they stand out as different layers. And in general, things that are brighter are interpreted by the eye as being closer. So if we can, we sort of want this lower wave to be a little brighter and more vibrant. So we'll see how that goes. Come up here to the sails. sails some color. Alright, so the sails got color. The blue background might be dry enough now. We'll find out, I guess, for me to put my little stars in. And I could leave her little pearl things just white, but I like to give them a little hint of yellow. Oops, and that one escaped out into the water. That's alright. Some little corals down here. Earrings. Go and make her purse. And again, we've got all these little wiggly lines in the purse, so we can make them different shades of color. So I suppose this upper thing is we want to make it light, but we don't want it to blend into the sky, because clearly a wave is not a sky. So we have to put in enough green so that it isn't the sky, but not so much that it starts to feel like it's in front of everything. And we can still put in multiple layers of these lower waves if we need them to get darker. Right, a little green down here. Alright, we want this boat to be brown, which means we'll have to add in some yellow at some point, and I'll still keep working on the red layer. Speaking of which, her hair should be dry enough now that we could add another layer. So we had purple, which is blue and red. Now I'm just going to add some more red in, because red is a very dark color, so this will help it darken up quickly. I think you can see already that this is getting nice and dark for the hair, and it's not quite the right color yet, but that's okay. We are still only on layer 2. You want each of these layers to dry a bit. And just darken it up. Well, there may be some people saying, oh, but wait, I liked it purple. Well, my purpose was never to make it purple in the end. So you get to enjoy a moment of purple, and you can make your own version that has it purple if you desire to have a purple hair. My issue with having a purple-haired mermaid in a blue sea is that those colors are fairly close to each other, and I really want her to stand out. I suppose I could have made it more of a greenish sea, but then I would want to change her fin color because I don't want a green fin and a green sea. That would be hard to distinguish amongst each other. Alright, so the hair is getting a bit darker now, which is good. That's what my aim is here. The darkness of the hair will draw the eye in. See if we can get some light red around the outside of this bottle. Let's do another of these waves. This wave being even lower down and closer to us. I want it to get a little darker. But again, I don't have to do that on the first pass. I can do this with layers. Green. It is relatively easy to go darker and darker. It's a little harder to make things lighter, but it's not impossible. Whatever you decide you've done, there are ways to make changes to it. Like if I decide I want this one here now to be even darker, I can do that. Blue crown in here. Oh, see that yellow is still a little wet. I should be able to pick the escaped color back out. Maybe just make the scales a little bit bluer. Alright. Make the ground a little brown, which means we'll put in some red, blue, and yellow. So got a little red in there. Blue, red plus blue makes purple. And a little yellow. And that turns into a brown. All right. Speaking of which, let's add a little yellow to the hair color. I should hit it a little more in a brownish direction. A little sleepy there. We'll deal with that later, because that's getting too wet to be able to pull it back out. Right, go back just to adding the yellow into the hair. Alright. And the purse, make the bottom of the purse a little darker. Alright, I'm a little, yeah, we won't touch the skin yet because that's too close to the hair. So we'll work on the tail, make the tail more vibrant. Alright, so we got the tail a little darker. Oh, maybe we could take a first pass at some of the skin, and maybe that is safe. So we'll put a little red in here. I want it to be a brown, but not as dark a brown as the hair. Which means a little red. Add in a little yellow. Add it in while the previous color is still wet, then it should blend quite nicely. little bit of blue. And keep in mind that this is all going to lighten while it dries. So you're not painting with its final color. You're painting something which is going to dry lighter. This is not quite looking red enough. Alright, we'll see how that looks when it dries. So we got a little more green up here. The upper layers of the sea. Ideally for me, I'd want the top layer to be the lightest, and then the next layers to get darker and darker as they came down. And then it would be good to have this lower layer even darker. Depends, of course, how many layers of blue I am in the mood to be adding to this. Got some more dark blue down here. Alright, so I think we've gotten it darker down at the bottom. And lighter at the top. Even out some of the colors up here. darken up her hair a bit more. We have to be careful again because I just painted the blue of the water. So we don't want this hair color all running rampant. Alright, so that's darker still. Make the crown a little darker. Start adding in some of the shading on the mermaid body. Alright. Alright, so I think we're getting to the point where the darker hair and the darker body is drawing the eye more. So we're back to purple again. I haven't quite decided what color I want that hair flower to be. It needs to be something reasonably light so it stands out against the dark hair. I could just try to make it a yellow color. It keeps getting a bit darker. Not super dark. We'll see how it goes. Alright. Anything else we can do? We can put little hints of blue shadow on the sides of the mermaid's tail. Saw there a little bit of escaped. I will go back and catch that. Alright, we have the star on her top. We'll make that green. Make the bottom of her purse just a little darker. Put a little bit of shading down the side of it. Put a little of shading in the dangles. And a bit of shading on the sides of the sails. As well, we're up here in the sails. I never quite got these beams to be browner. So a little bit of yellow makes them a little oranger. And then if we put in a little bit of blue, and some yellow. Alright, that's getting a little better. Alright, that's a little browner looking. Alright, what else do we need? So, I suppose I want to make the little pearls on her a hint of yellow. Sometimes we get a little bit of different color on this little heart bottle thing. Alright, anything else? Clean up the little splotch of yellow in there. Clean up the little splotch of brown in there. Clean up the little splotches it got on her lower arms. Alright, anything else? Do you want to do one more layer of color on her hair? And if so, what color? Maybe some blue. I don't think I need to do any scales on her leg fins. Sort of like them just the way they are now. Want the darkest part of her hair to be down here in these little nooks. And I suppose we never gave her hair flower color, so we'll do that in a moment. Alrighty. I'm just cleaning off my brush. Got this little bit of blue that I just put on her lower arm. So if you take a clean brush and wipe it over things, you should be able to remove the color. See if we could put some bright yellow. I just painted her hair, so her hair is going to be all wet. Put in some bright yellow anyway. Pull out some of that darker area to make enough space for this flower. Alright, that seems to have done the trick. I suppose we'll get a little blue. Put it around her. Take care of some of this brown issue. Alright. So there you have it. Peaceful mermaid.